share my screen. I don't want to see a share option. Oh, there we go. Do I need to go out? Yeah, I don't need to go outside that. Okay. Oh, widen my screen a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so welcome everyone, and this is part 2 of Are You a Boss or a Leader? And last week we did a lot of analysis of what a boss reactions or actions would be versus a leader's actions. We also did I gave out a link for a quiz so you could determine, based on answering a short survey quiz type, whether you would in the end become, were you a leader or a boss. So anyone want to tell me what they got, what the results were? How many people were bosses? 1. Everyone else was a leader? All right, good.
I was a leader, I'm sorry.
You was a leader?
I was a leader.
Oh, okay, so everyone was a leader. All right, so today we're going to talk about transitioning from a boss to a leader. So at some point, I think anybody who is a leader, he started out as a boss in some capacity. I wouldn't say complete 100% boss, because I think that leadership skills are actually, I won't say we're born leaders, but we are born with leadership qualities, and we either nurture them and become better at it, or we rather not be out front, or we'd rather be in the background. I have a few friends that I'm really close to, and a lot of their personalities, which I guess that says something about me, but they're usually the kind of people that stay in the background. And with my relationship with my husband, I'm more of the leader and he's more of the background. One of the things that I value the most about a person that stays kind of in the background, what I value the most about them is that they are really good. They tend to listen more, and they can pick up on all of the different qualities. Excuse me, I got like a little cold over the week. They tend to be more of a listener, paying close attention to body language and the surroundings that you're in. So my husband and I always were a team. I'd go in and do the talking, and he would tell me how everybody's expressions were, or their body language, and who was paying attention and who wasn't. So I respect that person that's in the background, but I don't necessarily think that he's not a boss or a leader. He's just better at listening and observing than I am. I'm always going to be the talker, the person out front. I think that is a good dynamic for being in business as well. When you go into meetings, when you go into any business environment, you're not going to be able to get all the information if you're speaking as well as listening. And so when you have that dynamic of partnership where you can get that both parts, it really works for a good business relationship and a business opportunity, because you get to see all the angles. Today is pretty easy because everybody's doing business through a Zoom, and you can pretty much get that feedback from the conversation that's going on in the chat box or comments that people make afterwards, and all of that. You get a little bit more information than you would in the old traditional way that we used to meet all the time, because you had to pay close attention so you wouldn't miss it. Today you can record the events, the meetings. There's a transcript. You got all these backup features that you can utilize so that you can get more of the detail that you may miss when you're out front as a leader, or you're a boss walking around trying to make sure everything's getting done correctly. You got all these resources in the technology way to assist you going forward. But I like to say, for some, making a shift from an employee or a boss to a leader for your company or a leader in your industry could be difficult. And like I said in my story last week, that you have to take some of your boss skills, integrate them into your leadership skills, so that you don't fall by the wayside in terms of people not following you as a leader or not respecting you as a leader. If they feel like they can get over on anything that you say and do, then you're not really going to be able to lead your team strongly. This approach is most important and most effective because the new role of solving problems, communication strategies, and being able to view the business that you're after as a whole and how the team is going to grow with it. So I wanted to put this statement in there that many rising stars stumble when they shift from leading a function to leading an enterprise, because while management positions certainly require leadership skills, being a large-scale leader usually requires very different processes and qualities than a manager. So you need to get prepared. And one of the ways that I always recommend, especially when I would hire my instructors, many times when I would hire my instructors, it was either especially someone that had really good technology skills, they were either a novice or they were actually a retired teacher and had, some computer skills, but not to the level that we needed in the classroom. But they had that management skill set. They were able to lead the classroom in a way that they would not allow people to come into the classroom and kind of take over or cause destruction or problems, and the students would end up not learning because there was all kind of interruptions going on in the classroom. And I have one teacher in particular. She was just afraid to tell people, stop interrupting or stop swearing. We would always get a lot of swearing in the classrooms when people couldn't get it quite right like they wanted it. And she would let that kind of behavior go on. And then the students would complain to the office, and I had to call her in a couple of times. And so one of my close friends, she said, Trina, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a leadership training for the entire team. And she also wanted to do a leadership training for the office administration as well. And so she came in and she worked at the casino, so she had a lot of experience in doing it. And one of the things that I admired about her training, which I subsequently kind of took and, upgraded and enhanced it and, just built upon it. I won't say upgraded and enhanced, but I built upon that foundation that she developed into the trainings that I actually ended up doing, not only for my staff, but for corporate contracts as well. And one of the things that she did, which, believe it or not, it was the first time I had ever heard of a strength and weakness, sort of like a SWOT analysis that didn't apply to a business environment for starting a business, but for the running of the business. And so I adopted that into my training, and here we have a list of some of those areas that I think are really important when you actually assess yourself. So here I've developed a pre-test, and I've got like 7 questions. And I'd like everybody to take a minute to actually answer as many as you can. You'll get the PowerPoint presentation, so you can do more later. Or at least take the first 2 questions. And that is, what are your strengths as a boss? And what are your weaknesses as a boss? Because if you can identify those 2 areas, those key areas, going forward, you'll be able to expand and improve on those areas, so that as you become this leader that you want to be, and you're stepping through that sort of mud to get to where you're as strong as you need to be, you'll be able to identify, because you've identified your strengths and weaknesses, you'll be able to work on improving those in any way that you have to. Did anybody want to go first and answer number 1? Aaron, I'm going to call on you because you're next up for a class.
Sure. So, like, in my day job, I'm not a boss, I'm an employee, but I was trying to think of, like, an applicable situation. I'm actually part of a community garden, and one thing I do a lot is I supervise our workday sessions, and I was trying to think of, like, a strength in that, and I think one thing I do pretty well is, like, assign tasks that are kind of geared towards people's strengths. Like, if somebody maybe isn't as physically strong, I don't like assign them like hauling really heavy stuff, you know, like maybe more like leading and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But yeah, I mean, I think a weakness of mine could also maybe be like task allocation for people and like assigning tasks.
Do you think you
Yeah,
have trouble assigning it? Why do you think you have trouble assigning tasks?
I don't know. I mean, I want to make sure that I'm assigning somebody something that is like at their skill level or something
Okay, yeah.
that, you know, something that maybe isn't like too hard or um, something that I just don't. I want to set people up for success.
Opposed to failure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to take a shot at it?
Well, I can go. For me, I guess my strength would be my ability to train people under me. So in working with students or colleagues and volunteers, then I've always had to train them to do exactly what I need them to do. And I've had upwards of over 100 volunteers at a time. So in training them and also making sure that they're able to do what I need them to do, then of course that took a lot of flexibility and keeping my hands on the whole operation.
Coordination.
Yes.
Actually, I thought that's where Aaron was going to go because he's done so many different workshops. I thought he was going to go in that direction as well. And what about your weaknesses, Michelle?
And I think I shared this before. My weakness would be delegation, only because for me, I just want it done right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But I have learned that delegating helps others grow and learn. So I've been over the past couple of years really working on that and realizing that my way of doing things isn't necessarily the right way and that there's other ways of doing something. So allowing someone else to do something their way and to possibly not do it right and have to redo it, that's okay too.
Yeah, I really had to learn that. It was a matter of trust for me as well. And once I realized that I was actually going to get more out of that person once I delegated than I would if I just gave them, two or three things to get done. So definitely. Hi, Lee. You want to take a shot at it?
Sure. It's kind of hard because I've never supervised anyone before, so I haven't been in like the traditional manager role. Um, but I guess I can take a stab at it. I think my strengths and weaknesses from what I'm coming up with on the spot feel somewhat similar. Like I think I'm pretty good at making sure that everyone feels heard, and I feel like from a team standpoint really like to get everyone's input and I don't know, kind of a feeler in that regard, but I think that can be a weakness at the same time because when conflict arises, I think it can be hard for someone like me to make sure that yeah, everyone is heard, but that the right next steps are made. And I think that can be hard when someone is trying so hard to balance everyone's feelings and ultimately certain situations are going to tip that scale a little bit. And I think that can be a weakness of mine for sure.
Right, because all it takes is one person as the part of the team to bring the entire morale down.
Right.
And that you have to be careful. I think Aaron kind of spoke to that as well because if you overwhelm someone, I remember one time it was so devastating to me. I was doing an evening class. I rarely towards I guess the first year or so after the first year, I never taught in the daytime. I had to manage the business. But to keep my hand in the game, I would do evening classes. And I had this group of about 8 people. And they were all county workers, meaning it was a great contract. And in those 8 people, there was one woman who it just was not clicking for her. What really upset me was that she was my mother's neighbor. She actually because of her inability or her reasons for not being able to keep up, she actually, and this is in class, so this is several years ago, she called all of the people because she was the supervisor, and she called, she saw them in the daytime. She convinced all of them that my class wasn't the best class to take because she felt like no one was learning. Obviously, I didn't know anything about it. She was the one that actually gave me the opportunity because she was my mother's neighbor and she knew I had the school. And so turns out that a couple of people that work with my husband in the school district, their wives were the ones that were in the class. And so they told the husband told my husband what was going on and how she had called each and every one of them and try to convince them to go go to the college instead of, and quit early in my class so they could choose another. And when I found out about it, I was so devastated. And I don't think that I did anything to her to really make her go in that direction, or I wasn't given an opportunity to change her mind, because once she got them all on board, and she was the supervisor, they actually said that it wasn't a good fit. And I wasn't devastated, but I was kind of hurt by it, because when you get a county contract, and I had been doing them for a few years by now, it's just not a good way to end you want to always end on a good note. And I guess I got some type of revelation, because when they went to the college and took that class, no one finished that one either. But by then the damage was done. I don't really think it affected anything, because I certainly got more contracts with the county after that, and it just was I didn't feel too upset about it, but it did bother me because I actually knew her, and my mom actually knew her. So the point of telling that story is that you do have to know. I think because I wasn't so much in the classroom as much, with running the business, like the first 2 sessions, I probably would have been keen on seeing that she was struggling, and then tried to, knowing that she was the boss, I would have tried to, approach her in a way to prevent this from happening. But of course I didn't. And I really didn't know it would go to that level, but it did. So you do have to know, your team. You have to know your students. You have to know exactly what's going on. And I learned from that experience. And I added an extra procedure to our daytime training. And one of those procedures was, believe it or not, that on a weekly basis, we would do an evaluation, have the students evaluate the teacher and the training consistently over the 16 weeks that I trained them. So if there were any red flags, we'd be able to identify them immediately and then address it. So that was my takeaway from that experience. And I still do evaluations on a weekly basis, because I think that you can't wait. And before that, we did them monthly. So every month we would do one, because the agency wanted one every month. So that's when we would do one, every month when we had to. But I found that with that procedure and policy change, I could actually justify that monthly evaluation by having those weekly evaluations. And not only did I have the student evaluate the instructor and the course materials, but I also had the instructor evaluate the student, so that it could go both ways. Everyone would know how they were doing weekly opposed to monthly. Pam, you want to take a shot at it? You're on mute.
One thing I was going to say about your situation is that the supervisor wasn't acting as a leader.
No.
I mean, she should have come to you and instead of bad-mouthing him to everybody.
I got to tell you a funny story. Fast forward, I think it was last July, not this past July, last year, 2019 July. I went to Jersey for some business, and we unpacked the car. My husband went in, and I forgot something, so I went back outside. I'm in my car, the back part of the car, and I'm getting something out. Lo and behold, this same person comes by and she slams into the door. She came about this far from hitting me with her car
Mm.
and destroyed the whole side of our car. And
Oh.
so it just was like, wow. And I thought about all the things, what she, I still was nice to her because she was a neighbor. But that was just, I don't know what that was. That was just crazy. And she was really nice about everything. We got the car repaired and all that. But it just brought back that memory of what she had done. So, those things you just never forget. It's ironic. All right. And it did.
At least you turned the negative into a positive by having,
Yeah,
weekly reviews, which is a good thing because
it was.
really after a month you do forget what happened first week of the month.
It definitely was. And I think that every time I came up with a great procedure or a policy that we changed or added to the company, it was based on some type of situation that came up. And those are the best policies and procedures to write, I think, because they've got a cause and a solution, and it's an actual situation that happened. So you're not writing a policy or a procedure, just from what may happen. You are responding to something that actually did happen, and then you've got, good data to deal with or choose from in developing it.
Yeah.
So a couple of more questions. What is motivating you to be a leader? I mean, that's if you identify that the fact that you are more of a boss and you want to become more of a leader. Do you have a solid understanding of the role of a leader? And have you taken any leadership trainings? I always recommend when you're, going down a new path or trying a new venture or a new project, even if it's in your same job or it's, something that is going to, you foresee coming down the road that you may have to educate yourself on. I definitely always recommend to take some workshops and get some official training, because not only does it help you with the task in front of you, but it could also enhance tasks that are going to come to you later on in your role, whether it's a business owner or it's working for, as an employee or a manager or a boss. One of the things that I did, which was so helpful, because with my business, everything shut down. All the funding agencies, the one-stop centers, all of that in New Jersey just totally shut down. So at the end of February, when I finished my last class, there was no, the phone wasn't ringing, and people weren't calling me for when the next class was. And I was excited a little bit about that because I could use a break. And I've never really had a down period in my entire career other than being sick or whatever. And so I was kind of looking forward to the time off, and in being able to have that time off, I started to get bored. And then I found out about Janet's program. Or actually, I found out about this program. I'm not sure how I got the email or whatever. And I actually took the Baltimore class. And then I found out about Janet's class. And it was just fun to go from being a leader to a student. Always trying to figure out how I'm going to, what I'm going to do next with the business, and, what I need to change to enhance my curriculum, and making sure the students are learning, and all of that busy stuff that comes with running a private vocational school. I now have some time to sit down and learn. And I can't tell you all the attributes that I took from that class. I also learned from that class how to slow my pace, because I was the person trying to be this best leader I could be, and only having 12 weeks with us. When I first started out, it was 16-week programs. Now it's down to 12 weeks. And I was still trying to cram 16 weeks of everything into those 12 weeks, plus all the new things going on. And I was I was an overkill. And my students would complain, but they would also come to me afterwards and say, Trina, I'm so glad I took that class. Everything you taught me had its value. I'm using it on the job. Day one I started, I was actually using some of the skills that I learned. And I was always thinking I was, doing the right thing, because the reward came at the end when the students would, thank me for it. But I also was like just stressing everything out with myself, trying to make sure that everybody knew as much as I knew. And you just can't do that. I've been in this for 30 years. How could I teach them everything I know in 12 weeks? So the pace that I learned from Janet and putting in more extras into the class that allow the participation of the student makes for a better teacher and a better leader as well. And I found that when I would teach my classes, I was so up on giving them the information, and I also gave equal time for questions, and just anybody giving suggestions on how we could improve and all that. But I think that I had to slow down a little bit so that I could appreciate what I was getting in terms of feedback from my students. And it took a class like that class with Janet to teach me that, there's other ways of teaching people that work more effectively or as effectively as what I have been doing and training my instructors to do as well. And of course, my instructors would always put their own twist on it, and I was totally fine with that as long as they followed the curriculum. But I never did it for myself. And so now I definitely appreciate taking that class and getting that extra training, not even knowing that leadership training was going to be in it to a different degree than I already have, because I teach these classes myself. And you can always just take a minute and sit down and learn from somebody else. Even if you've been doing it for 20, 30 years, you can still learn how to do a lot more than what you're doing in a better, more efficient and effective way. And that's what I've learned how to do with not only Janet's class, but a few other classes that I took. Number 6, do you have a mentor who has years of experience as a leader so that you can throw off questions to? You can, if there's a situation that you need to get advice on, definitely, reach out, find someone that is doing what you do and get that person, befriend that person. Or, sometimes you have to, maybe pay for it if it's that important and you're needing it for your career, taking a class and then maybe having one of the teachers become your mentor. In any rate, that, those kinds of people that are doing what you do is always important to build a relationship with them. What are your values and belief systems that drive the way you influence others, which is so important. So this pre-test is it's just thought provoking. It's not a pass or fail. It's just to get you to start thinking along the lines of this leadership role that you want to walk into or enhance if you're already in that capacity. Any questions? I wanted to give you a couple of samples of the strengths of a boss, which we kind of reviewed last week. Honesty, the ability to mentor staff and provide resources, the ability to motivate, trust. That was a big thing for me with the trust thing. Not that I didn't trust people, I just needed to trust the process. The willingness to deliver open and honest feedback. I think that's so important because when you give feedback, if it's delivered in the wrong way, it won't be taken as good feedback. And you have to pay attention to your body language, your eyes, your how you say things, the tone. People who tend to talk slowly and with a softer voice, I think, get more attention than somebody that's obviously trying to sound strong and purposeful, but also intimidating the person at the same time. The ability to inspire, which is so important. I mean, I don't care who it is or what the problem is. I always like to tell people it's just going to get better. It's always going to work itself out. And I believe that with everything. Everything. And then self-awareness. Be cognizant of the things that you do and the effect it has on others. I know for me and my mom is, and everybody loves her for it, so it's so ironic. But she is a straight paper person. She tells you exactly how it is. She has no diplomacy. She's not diplomatic in any way. It's just straight up. And people love her and admire her for it. And I think that it has its place. But when you're in business and you're working with a team of people that you want to inspire and encourage, you got to really find diplomacy so that you don't offend them. And you make sure that, the way you deliver anything is in a receiving way, opposed to, like just pushing and just slamming people up against the wall with what you say and how you say it. Weaknesses, separating or standing apart from your team, being overly critical, micromanaging, requiring constant contact with people. I had that I told you guys that story. Acting without integrity, failing to set clear expectations, failing to set clear goals or objectives, and providing ineffective feedback that doesn't really work great for the team. Everybody clear on that? Everybody good with that? All right. I love doing these things. I'm not going to ask you to do it now, but I put it in the chat so that you guys can copy it. This is an 8-minute stress assessment because it did end just now on that slide about self-assessment. Just trying to figure out where you are in terms of, you know, how you deal with people, how you, what makes you upset. Great follow-up to what I'm doing is what Aaron's going to do about anger management. You know, some people can't, you know, if it just doesn't go, and I have those moments too, when I just, you know, something's irritating me and you know, I've got something that I got to get done and somebody's bugging me. I got to like just calm myself down so that I don't give the wrong impression, because I'm really not upset with you. I'm really upset with the fact that I've got all this pressure cooking and I got to get it done. And I feel I do my best work when I'm under pressure, but that is only when I'm not interrupted. When I'm in the room getting what I got to get done, the phone's not ringing, no one's texting me, no one's calling me, I get my best work done. And when I'm interrupted, it kind of just frustrates me. And those are the things that I've like to say that I've actually worked on and gotten a whole lot better at as I've grown in my business and grown as a person. And not that all of that's in this assessment, but this is a very detailed assessment. So when you take it, it's free, and they'll email you it. It's about 6 or 7 pages, and this is a short sample of the diagram, and all of your answers that you give, it'll give you some detailed information on your leadership skills based on how you answered those questions. So I hope everybody takes that out the chat and actually does it. Next, I want to talk about post self-assessment. After you do the self-assessment where you have identified your boss strengths and weaknesses, you can begin by educating yourself and transitioning from a boss to a leader. We already spoke a little bit about that. I think the second biggest thing is to upgrade your visual appearance. So if you're a boss, and I don't want anybody to take this in a negative way, but let's say you're in a work environment and everybody wore khakis and a t-shirt on the job, and now you are a leader of the team. I think the way that you dress and the way you present yourself will establish that protocol for you stepping away from being that boss or a coworker, and now you're in that leadership role. So I highly recommend that you change your appearance, not to the point where people, oh, now she's a boss, or I'm sorry, now she's a leader, or she's a boss actually. Now she's, wearing 3-piece suits and all that. I wouldn't say go that far, but at least, make your appearance seem to be a little bit different than everybody else. You want to stand out, not to a point where you alienate anybody, but where if someone walks in the room, they know who the boss is or the leader is, opposed to everybody else. And I don't say that to say that, you want to stand out, but I also say it because you're still a team. You got to remember that team concept so that you're not the person that is always given the accolades or given you want everybody to be at the same level as a team. Has anybody experienced that where they had to change anything about themselves because they went into a more of a leadership role? Not necessarily a boss, but you had to kind of stand out. You really didn't want to, but you knew it was important. Lee, you're shaking your head yes.
Yeah, I have.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. I was in a job a couple of years ago where I was working for a nonprofit, but I was doing lobbying at the state level. And we had to be in Annapolis during the legislative session every day. And it was the first job where I had to wear heels every day, suits, tights, the whole 9 yards. And I mean, it's not that my previous positions I dressed unprofessionally. It just was more like
More,
business
yeah.
casual
Mm-hmm.
than like, yeah. And I think it goes both ways. I totally hear what you're saying, Trina. Like, I think that, you know, especially for women, there's certain roles where like you have to dress in order to be taken seriously, and there's varying degrees within that. Of course, I think there's other ways though, in general, where like changing your look dramatically can have some consequences on you personally. I think that there's a barrier, or not a barrier, like there's a line there. You know, I wouldn't want to recommend, and I don't think this is what you're recommending, but I wouldn't want someone to like change themselves dramatically for a workplace, and I feel like those consequences can be harsh
Mm-hmm.
on an individual and like their true character. So there's definitely got to be some balance.
Some
there.
balance. Yep, that's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah.
What about you, Pam?
I mean, I feel like I always dress professionally. Um, and, you know, I've been with the same company. I had been with the same company for 14 years, and the dress code had changed, you know, within the time that I was there. So I always, you know, try to dress a little bit more professionally than what's required. Um,
But not,
you know,
you were never in a position where you were kind of forced to do it, and your peers or your teammates.
not really.
Not really.
Like usually I went from like a position to a position. Like I wasn't promoted within a group. So, you know, maybe when I went from one position to another, I would, you know, change my, you know, my work clothes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to be a little bit a step up, but not.
Not to
I
any
can't
major
say that I was
degree.
in
Yeah,
a situation where I was.
definitely. I had to when I was at the casino. I had to. It was mandated. I mean, we kind of just, when I was working in the MIS department, we all had to, we had to stay professional, but we didn't have to wear a suit as a woman. When I got promoted to that manager position I was referring to you, we had to wear suits to all. We were in meetings, and we were in meetings with top executives, so you just couldn't come there in a relaxed mode. And remember, this was like in the 80s, early 90s. So we just had to. And the reason I put that in my presentation, like way back when I developed this, is because I felt that. I mean, everybody just started to treat me different. I tried my best to stay cool with everybody. But even like the programmers was like, oh, she's Oprah Winfrey now. She got to dress up every day. They just would tease me all day long. They always call me Oprah, little Oprah Winfrey. And always was like, yeah, she's got to, spend more money now. You can't do this. You can't. It was always a hassle. And I never really was comfortable with it on account of I always like just being relaxed. I was always relaxed with them anyway. But then when I became boss, the manager, my role had to change. But I eventually got back to where we were, and it wasn't because of what I had to do. We got a new executive director, and he wanted all the guys to wear a shirt and tie. It was mandated. So it was more. It was probably like 5 women in the department. So the majority of the people in the department had to start wearing the shirt and tie. So it kind of like worked itself out. But it was very awkward during that time. Let's hear from Christian. Kristen or Tracy? No? Okay. All right. So after, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Really quickly, just not while we're on this topic, it's something I've been thinking about a little bit in light of COVID. I'm not sure how many people here are they going into the office or working remote. I know I'm working remote 100% of the time, and one thing I definitely didn't expect as a result of working remote all the time is how much I do miss
getting dressed for work and obviously being in an office, but there's, for some odd reason, of like, whether you're getting super super dressed up for work or just like getting regularly dressed for work, it does kind of put you in a mental state for being at work that is very different when you're working remote every day and you don't necessarily have to.
It's true. And your evening is totally different because the night before work, you're planning, you're figuring out what you're getting everything in order. And then, of course, in the morning, you got to get up earlier and do whatever it is that you got to do to get there on time and all of that. So it does change your mindset. And I think Michelle in another class said something that, she was tending to work more hours because she was working from home. Whereas if she was in the building, she would have, 5 o'clock gotten ready to go. Right, Michelle?
Yes, I definitely did not like working from home. So for the past 2 years, I worked from home 1 day a week, and I did not like it.
How you feel about it now? You still don't like it?
Well, I'm not working, so
Oh, okay. Oh, well, you've been working. Janice
well,
classes
yeah,
had us working, boy. Believe me.
exactly.
8:30, 2 days a week. Absolutely.
But
Uh,
yeah, but
Like
maybe
I can say them, we usually meet on Mondays at the corner, Monday evenings, the corner community center at 6:30, and that would always be like, I gotta get there from downtown Baltimore, like, so I had a firm end date. Whereas now, working from home and it's a little more fluid, and I find myself like still on it at work, and I was like, oh no, it's almost 6:30 where I didn't
yeah.
normally have a strict cutoff because I had to be there physically um, to run this through.
Well, I'm probably the only one. I love this work from home thing. I love it. Like today with my new class, I just started. Well, we had orientation a week ago, and then we had tech literacy. Actually, 2 weeks ago it started, and today was the first day of Word. And I can't tell you. I sent out the packet and got on 9 o'clock this morning, and all of the students, we were on for about 20 minutes. They had done all their work. I just see such a big shift in the fact. I mean, I would give them their assignments that Wednesday before the Monday, and they'd come in, they forgot their book, half of it wasn't done. And I've noticed in about the last 5 or 6 classes that I've done over the last, like couple of years, people are just they get it done quicker. And so we stopped class this morning around 10 o'clock, and it was half an hour of it was chit chat. And I make them do presentations every day of their assignments. But because they're working from home, they just were like, I wanted to get it out of the way and get it done so I could free up my day. So that's another kind of take on it. And I can't tell you how much I love that. Because it just, for me, it makes my job easier, but it also prepares the students for these remote jobs so that they understand that the time management is so important. Second, expand your perspectives, strategic planning and implementation. I think that when you assess where your weaknesses are and your strengths are, and you figure out where they are in terms of what your role is going to be as a leader, that you need to be able to put together a strong strategic plan. Like where is it that you want to go with this new role that you're in? And then how are you going to implement it? I'm a big person on documentation. I like to write things down. All my clients, I create like a book, and I keep track of all my notes and my plan of action for them, and how I'm going to strategically get them there. And I like to write it out. My son always teases me about using the paper and pencil when I've got all this technology around me. But I just like writing it down first. And then once I get it down in my mind, then I can go to the computer and then just lay it completely out. So I think when you're going into a leadership role, you have to plan it. You can't just go in it and say, okay, I'm your new leader. Here's what we're going to get done. If you have a strategic plan and it's a written plan that you can give to the person or the team, and you've got like a task list of what are the things that you're going to do to implement it, I think you bring everybody together and they're all aware and knowledgeable of the plans. So it's not anything top secret, and they can all figure out how they fit in that whole entire picture. Because if you don't feel like you're going to be a part of something, how could you, buy into it if you don't know what your role, you're in the blind of where you're going to go and how you're going to do it. So if you strategically plan how you're going to implement as the new leader, I think you'll get much, much better results. And say it's a draft. Let the team know it's a draft. So any input that they have from your document is welcomed. And I want to implement it, because they may be in an area of knowledge and experience that you don't have, because you were the boss, but you didn't pay too much attention about it because you were a boss. You just cared about things getting done. So as the leader, and you're leading them into this new level of for the company or for the new business, you want them to be able to work with you and become a team player going forward, so that all the aspects of the entire concept are getting done and every person is participating. Develop short-term and long-term goals, objectives, and a mission statement. So important. If it's your new company, definitely you want to put together your short-term and long-term goals as you're hiring these new people to come in, so they can see the picture. And so when they sign to come on board with you to work with you, they already know what the goals and objectives are, and they also know what your mission is for the company. If it's for a job or a career that you're in, you want to know where they're going in the next. This is something you ask in the interview. This is something you find out initially. Will you always get the concrete answer, the true answer? No, but at least they know that you're inquisitive, and you're trying to figure out what and where things are going, to see if you are a good fit, at the same time that they're trying to see if you're a good fit. And they already know where the company's about to go, and you don't, as a new person trying to get the job. I don't see anything wrong with asking them, do you have a mission statement? What are your objectives and goals for the upcoming year? Especially in this pandemic. Things could have done between 2019 and 20 a whole different way come to 2021. And, it's a good idea to let your team know exactly what's going to change, possible dates of when it's going to change, and how it's going to affect them. Develop and implement a more diversity way of thinking for yourself and the team, especially with all that's going on in the world right now. We have to think outside the box. We have to make sure that every aspect of every person on the team has been addressed in terms of what we're going to deliver as a team, how we're going to get there to that delivery, and what is it going to pull from each person individually to make sure that this entire process works in the best interest of the office, the business, or the future of the company. Any questions about that? Maintain a big picture perspective by regularly linking day-to-day performances with broader implications for not only the company's future, but your own. So after you assess yourself and you actually develop your mission statement and your long-term goals, you have to maintain that big picture perspective. Don't change it in the middle unless it absolutely is necessary. And if you do have to do change management, where you make sure the whole team is aware of the changes and how it affects their daily activities as they have been progressing along to reach that ultimate goal and objective. So lastly, I'm going to give you 4 tips for when you transition from being a boss to a leader. Assess the team. I just talked about assessing yourself, figuring out where your strengths and weaknesses are. You're going to need to do that for the team as well. How would you do that if you have maybe 10 or 15 team players, or you got a large crowd? Not a large crowd, but you got a large set of employees, maybe 50 to 100. There are 2 fronts where a leader wants to take steps to assess the team, and that is finding out what the team morale is, the productivity and experience, and their individual vision for the business. Where do they see themselves going forward? Anyone have any ideas of how that would best be done? Molly, what do you think?
from my experience, and I've been doing this and learning over time, but meeting one-on-one with team members, it might be harder if you're leading a team of the 50 to 100, but I'm in that like 15 employee mode. So, getting their feedback and their, where they see themselves and all that in one-on-one meetings.
I agree. Anybody else? Any input from anybody else? If you have more than 50 or you have like 30, you could always use technology. You could do surveys. You can do, opinion evaluations. I think just contacting them and asking them any type of questions makes them feel more needed, more involved, more of wanting to do anything that they can do to move the team forward. Because leaders are not always involved in the day-to-day management of the projects and employee tax. That's usually the job of the manager. Leaders usually will encourage and inspire growth and set the bar for any future changes, innovations, the goals, the strategies, all those important things that are going towards the mission statement and the objectives for the business or the company, or maybe even just the department. And you want to make sure that people feel a part of that whole aspect of it. And it gives for good input because you may be leading in one direction and the team gives you a whole nother perspective, which may have you take a look at the entire picture and maybe redirect some of the things that the company especially the people on the ground floor who are actually dealing with the customers, the people who are actually working with the clients, providing the service to the people. They're going to get that really ground floor experience and knowledge that up in management or as the leader that you won't have exposure to, especially if you haven't been on the ground floor in years. And so their input to me is so important. I would always, when I still do it sometimes, but I don't have that many subcontractors in lieu of the pandemic now. But I would always have every 6 months for the company, we would do a retreat. And I got that idea because I was a school board member for about 8 years. And every year the board would go on a retreat. And we would hire somebody outside of the school district to conduct a retreat. And so everything was objective about that retreat. And so what I would do is my long-term friend that worked in the casino in the HR department, she would host it. And she was really good. She would put together all the materials and everything that we needed to do the retreat. And we'd serve lunch, continental breakfast in the afternoon. I paid them a training rate, and we would just sit down and just try to go through everything that we thought that we needed. We'd also invite our advisory board members in as well towards the afternoon session so that they could not only speak with our staff, but also give their input and their ideas, because the advisory board members were coming from those respective industries where they worked, and they were mostly managers or directors. And so it was just a great opportunity to get as much information from several different levels. And then we would actually plan what we were going to do for the next 6 months for the company. And those solid policies and procedures in place make for a solid business, so that if you're at the helm of it and you're the leader, you don't feel so overwhelmed because you have to do everything. And I relied on these people. I also relied on my teachers. They were in the classroom every day with the students, and they knew what was needed and what wasn't needed, or what the students were complaining about the curriculum, or what they found out when they friends of them they got jobs, and maybe it was something that they knew how to do that my students didn't know. All kinds of great input, and it always worked good. So much so that we started to give out awards and show recognition to our students, our staff, for the great job that they were doing. So it turned into something really, really good. I think we're on the second bullet. Leaders are no longer just concerned with their own department's goals, which fall under management. Leaders must always consider the overall health and wealth of the company and measure current priorities and challenges with long-term growth. Leaders create and drive the overall vision for the business, while good managers implement, track, administer, and make sure the vision is carried out by the staff members or the team. So assessing the team is so very important. I can't tell you how beneficial it was for us to do those retreats. Shift your focus forward. As a manager or an employee, much of your focus was likely on your own performance objectives and whether or not you were meeting your quarterly or yearly goals. As a leader, your mindset should shift from your own performance or that of your immediate team members to prioritizing the success and nurturing the growth potential of every employee in the organization. And again, I go back to what I was saying before, that you have to be able to get their input. I mean, I always welcome the help, welcome the ideas, because if you can figure out a way to get it done faster or better than me, fine. It's still got the name T-Bird Computers on the building, on the paychecks, on everything else. And I learned that all the way back to when I was working in the casino, and I got that great piece of advice from my good friend Pete. And, he told me delegate. And when I trusted those people and delegated and found out I could get better results, I was in. And I never questioned that decision going forward, ever. And I still don't today. Becoming a leader means learning to balance the letting go of your ego. It's not just about you and your immediate team anymore. While still taking responsibility and ownership of the organization, the buck stops here and all that. So, I mean, you got to look, especially if you're going to be a business owner. I mean, I know a lot of this was about a segment for entrepreneurship, and I'm talking a lot about careers as well. But in entrepreneurship, when you start your own business, and you just have the reason why you have to develop a good relationship with your team, and you have to rely on your team, because there are going to be days where you got to go in there and disinfect the bathrooms. You got to go in there and make sure that the lunch we served we had a lot of people that were unemployed and couldn't afford lunch. So every day, literally, I would go into our little small kitchen area and I would make a great big pot of soup. And we would have like some other kind of option other than soup. I would make like a big pot of spaghetti, something big where you can make a lot of it. And we would have to feed veterans who didn't have enough money to buy lunch, but they got approved to go to the training program. We would have people that just, they had to give their last money to their kids for their lunch, and would come there, with a little, I remember this lady had a little 6-pack of crackers. And I just remembered that day, I was like, how much is it to make a pot of soup? And I would just make a big pot of chicken noodle soup every single day with something else, and feed them. And I had to do that. I couldn't afford to bring a person in and make lunch every day. So I would have to, start off at like 10 o'clock, put everything in the oven, get it rolling, and then of course do my other regular job, make sure my teachers were doing what they were doing. If something broke in the anywhere, I'd have to go. So you need to rely on your team to keep the daily business going, so that if there's something else that goes wrong in the company, you got to be able to fill in. That's just your job. My third bullet is any questions? Anybody got any questions? Comments? Don't just instruct. Good leaders know how to set goals and inspire the team. Create a positive attitude among everyone. Identify what success will look like. Provide ideas for the team's motivation. Support the team. And acknowledge and reward performance. I just told you about our retreats that we ended up giving out certificates for special things that our instructors would do. At one given time, we had 5 locations, I think it was, including the main one. And we had probably about 4 or 5 teachers and support staff, 2 support staff at each one of those locations. So every Friday, I would bring them down for just a weekly meeting. And I didn't actually reward their performance every week, but they would come obviously to get their checks. And the reason I did that was so that I wouldn't have to go to each location or pay to send the checks anywhere. They all came down. They knew we were going to get lunch. They knew we were going to get their check. And we were also going to discuss the issues on each location also find out, things that we needed to improve on as a team. And so I definitely would have, feed them. And for some of the local ones, after we had done our weekly meeting, we would go out to a location and just have some fun, have a few drinks and just enjoy ourselves. But it kept the morale up. So really, with the morale was good. They loved coming to work every day. Of course, we had some people that were complainers, but rather than singling them out, I would always have them come in my office. I never met with anybody by myself. I would always have them come in the office, have my office manager there, and tell me what it is that we can do to fix your issues. What is it that you're having problems with? And usually it was just something really small. They were having a bad day, a problem child in the classroom, or problems at home. And after they got done talking to me, they always felt better because I wanted to make sure that they felt that they could talk to me about anything. And they could also feel as though coming to work would not just be another added issue for them, even if they were having a bad day. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't this great, perfect boss. I had my issues too. But I also wanted to make sure that I kept that balance because you got to keep that boss thing going because people will look at your inability to be able to be strong with them as a weakness. So you don't want to create that environment either. But one of the things that I always did was I also held training. I always wanted them to attend additional training sessions for whatever we needed. If it was about the new the new state laws and regulations that we had to adhere to, the changes in curriculum. I would have my advisory board members come in and do morale boosting kind of workshops. We was always educating them, and we always gave them a certificate for those kinds of things. And we would do them not every single Friday when we had our weekly meetings, but at least once a month we would have that kind of educational type of training for them so that they could feel not only if it was a good place to work and a learning place, they got that certificate. They also got paid. It was just an environment where they would feel good about coming every day. And that's what I wanted. I want everybody to be in a good mode so that we can make sure these students learn. The overall philosophy upon which the entire company culture depends on those attributes coming from the leader. Often in times of difficulty, a company's leadership team can set the tone, whether it be good or bad. It's one of the few things that keeps the company running smoothly and drives business to grow. And if employees are truly inspired and proud of the ideals and values communicated by the leader, they'll not only perform better in times of growth, but they'll also stick it out when challenges rock the boat. And I've had that with so many of my employees that, we had a company that came in and half my staff left. The half that stayed, I was so happy that they stayed, and I rewarded them for staying. And the half that left that went to that other company who offered them 2 cents more, they got treated so poorly that they all ended up leaving. And within 2 years, that company went out of business. And we are still a school all these many years later. And I've run into some of those folks. And they were like, Trina, that was the worst mistake I ever made. And I was like, I understand you got to grow. And you got to take challenges and you got to take risks. So I'm not mad at you. You can't come back, but I ain't mad at you. All right, my last bullet is communicating big ideas. You're the leader. Don't just sit back and wait for the team to come to you to come up with big ideas. Set big agendas for the company, create wider strategies, and define the tone for the company culture and future under your leadership. I get more reward out of the ideas that my people come up with than the ones that I come up with. And why? Because I know I've been thinking based on the same foundation of who I am all these years. So if you come up with a great idea and that one comes up with a great idea, we can build upon that foundation and we can get better results. Because when you get more input from other people, the team just grows and the team's morale grows and everybody is excited about implementing whatever it is, and they can show and shine So when your job, you may get promoted to director, and now they're, become the assistant director. You'll know who that person is based on the fact of how they've contributed to the whole team philosophy in all these months that you've been a leader. So cultivate these people, make them feel like they're as important as you are to your boss. Make them feel that they are as important to you as their boss or leader. Effective leaders must learn how to communicate these big ideas to everyone in the company, not just management. Successful leaders understand how to craft effective, clear, transparent, and consistent messaging that inspires the best work from their employees. One of the things that when I was working, actually, I won't say working, when I was on a board with the school board, and we had a superintendent. One day on Tuesday, she'd meet with the board and tell us one thing. On Thursday, we meet with the board and she'd tell us a different thing. And everyone was just so frustrated with her because we had to make decisions based on her recommendations, the data that she sent us. And then right before we would go to vote on something, she'd come up with this brand new piece of whatever, and it would just throw everybody off. And then we would get upset because now we had to listen to another 20, 30 minutes or read some additional information when we should have been getting all of that information and been prepared to go sit at that meeting and take a vote. So when you're the leader, you want to make sure that the people understand exactly what the message is and you have supporting documentation for that message. And that when you send it to them, it is the final copy. Obviously, some things can come into play and make for changes, but not on a consistent every other day basis, because that just demonstrates that you're not organized, that you're not leading in the right capacity. People don't want to be looking at you crazy because you just are not you're sending too many mixed messages. And you have to make sure that you have not only a strong message, but a concise message, and everything that you've done supports that message, including your documentation, including your delivery, your presentation, all of that. In effect, leaders must brand themselves in a way with their own organization so that at every level, the priorities, goals, vision, mission, and passion of the leadership is so effectively communicated to the employees that these become shared priorities, shared vision, and shared mission. People buy into it because they're excited. They want to do their best job because they feel they're going to be rewarded, appreciated, and acknowledged. And that's all people want to be, is acknowledged. If you do a good job and you come there every day, you're on time, all you want somebody to do is say good job. Even if you don't mean it. You may have internal things going on, but you know deep down that that person is doing a great job. Say it. Just say it. It's easier. It makes that person feel good. It makes that person feel like, I'm doing this for a good reason. I'm getting some results. Everyone wants results. Everything about life is results driven. We go past the driver's test because we want to be able to drive the car. We go buy the home because we want to be able to relax and feel safe. Everything is results driven. So you got to take that leadership role as results driven as well for the team and for yourself. Because if you keep the team happy, guess what? You'll be happy. Same way with the happy wife, happy life. Same thing applies with the team. Because if you got one person in there causing all kind of havoc, it's going to affect everybody else, and you'll just be miserable. Any questions?
Trina, I have a question. Do you have any suggestions based on your experience for building morale in a virtual environment?
Well, I didn't do this, but and this is something I thought was so exciting. So my son's been working for about, I think they actually went virtual in February, early. They went out early. And what they do, he works for a subcontractor for the government. And what they do is they have a happy hour every month. Every month, they get a package in the mail. It's delivered.
Virtual.
Yep. It's so cool. And it's all these ingredients for a drink. and it's all these ingredients to make this like little snack. So I think they did sliders last month, and it had everything. It was all prepackaged, had a nice little um, things to do, what to do list, and then they all went virtual, and they all opened up the package, and they had to really like set the, they had to be on their phones or tablet, and it involved cooking, so they all had to set up and make sure that they were able to cook, and they had such, I mean, we had to stay in the background, but they had such a great time because they were showing appreciation to the team, and they usually would do that. They would go have happy hour, and so to get all that, it was nicely packaged, and there's companies out there that are doing that. So that would be my recommendation to keep morale up. Is just kind of try to figure out a Zoom way of or virtual way of doing the things that you used to do, but just coming up with a more creative way of getting it done, and still being connected to people other than just sitting here listening to me talk or give I know you guys appreciate the message I've brought to you, but it would be nice right now if we could just now start to put together that cocktail, right, and have a little sip. That would have been real nice. Maybe next time. Any other questions? Well, even though this is only 2 weeks, 2 sessions, guess what I got for you? Not a cocktail, but homework. So I got like a little quiz here. I put it in the PowerPoint. I'm going to send this over to Molly so she can give it to everybody. And it's just like a post test. So all of this good information I've given you, you'll go back and answer these questions and then just kind of rate yourself now that you've learned, and what you project that you'll be doing as you start to incorporate some of the features and the aspects that I've given you. It is about 16 questions, and it actually gives you, oh wait, I got that in there twice, I gotta delete that. It gives you what the score is for whatever numbers you get. So you'll get the answer and you'll be able to rate yourself. So you can tell I'm always going to be giving homework out. But it's oh, and I also have I'm going to send them to Molly. I have a couple of handouts that I thought were really good. I didn't want to like try to squeeze it into the time period. But a couple of leadership handouts. One of them is an ebook. So just some supporting materials to help you in your progression as you even if it's not now that you're about to take on this leadership role, but you may need have that in the near future, so you'll have some support materials that you can fall back on.
What I've been doing with bigger groups, I just sent to Janet and she puts it in the job hunter support group classroom,
Yeah.
library. But since this is a small group, if you just shoot me your email in the chat, I know we have some of you, but I don't think I have everyone. If I have Pam, Michelle, Tracy, or that person Ron. I don't have your emails readily accessible, so if you send them to me in the chat, that'd be a quicker way of you accessing the materials once Trina sends them to me.
Any questions? Anybody have any closing comments they want to make? Are you guys? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to put a quick plug in for the anger management group that I'm going to be starting tomorrow for 3 sessions. Talking about what makes us angry and different tools we can use in order to counteract anger. And then after I finish that, on Tuesdays I'll be doing a 3-session group on the book What Color Is Your Parachute. So we'll go through the book together, and that book was written in the 80s, but they've recently released a 2020 version of it that talks about LinkedIn and all the new technology in the job search process. So that's just my little plug.
And what time is it, Aaron?
It's at 6:30, so it's just like this, except on Tuesdays for the next 6 weeks. So 3 weeks of anger management and then 3 weeks of parachute.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
The only comment I had is, we were talking before about, like engagement leaders, engaging their team. And, I think for a larger group, it's good to, have sort of like an open door policy and also to, make it known that you're available, and to be present, to maybe if you're working in an office environment, which of course is pre-COVID, but, just to walk around, say hi to people, acknowledge the larger team. Even if you don't have, if you're not able to have, one-on-one meetings or, small team
Mm-hmm.
to show that you know who, is on your team and, small talk sometimes too, so, pretty fun.
Especially in today's time. Yeah, I agree.
And like you said, like having, like team meetings, or luncheons, or, small tokens of appreciation. We're always nice, even if you put out like a box, donuts, cookies, or something, to show that you're thinking of the team.
And I think too that when you try to engage people, even if it does have to be a Zoom meeting, but when you engage people and get them to just give their opinion, it just makes for it just makes a difference, especially with this COVID thing. Because we don't see everybody like we used to. I didn't even realize how much I miss being around people. And we did a food truck in the summertime. When I don't really do classes in the summertime, so I would work with my husband on his food truck, and then that was exciting. People were coming up to the food truck, and you get to see their face, how happy they were when they saw their meal, and I didn't realize how much I missed that. And it's not the same as Zoom, but I still love virtual.
Well, I just wanted to add that
Trina.
hello. I know that we've all had some supervisors that we definitely learned what not to do from them.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I think really added a personal touch was on the floor that I used to work on, we had about 50 employees, and every morning that the vice president was in the office, he would personally walk around to everybody's office or cubicle and say good morning. So I think that served two purposes: to give a personal touch to let everyone know that he's personally saying good morning to them, but also to make sure that they were there. So,
It does make a big difference.
mhm.
It does. Even with the clients, like I would always go, in the morning and go visit all my classes, and I had burnout because I'd be at one place on Monday, another place on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then Friday I was back at the office. And I did that for a number of reasons, because I wanted them to know, who I didn't want them to think that this was just a school and whoever that person was that owned it, didn't give a hoot about them. I wanted them to know who I was. So when I came in there, they would know, I was there not to, you know, just show my appearance, but if you had any issues or any concerns that you wanted to, and at that time, it wasn't like you picked everybody didn't have cell phones or, the ability felt comfortable like we do now. We talk that, everybody is just loves to talk now, and I think cell phones had a big part in that. But back, like 15, 20 years ago, people kind of like didn't do a lot of talking on the phone. And so I wanted to be visual there so that they could see me and know that, I was there and just get input from them, especially because they were all different places in the state. So I wanted to know what was good in, one part of the state versus the southern part of the state. Because, that curriculum was a generic curriculum and it may not fit in all those different areas. And not always will my managers for each site convey to the team that, you know, I cared, and I wanted them to know that I did if they didn't convey that. So it is important. So everyone's looking for a leadership job now, right?
Just looking for a job.
Well, I think things are going to be, you know, getting a little better, hopefully. And I hope this pandemic thing gets better.
It's hard though, like even at this time of year, under normal circumstances.
Under regular, you're right. Yep. I think the holidays are going to be hard too. I mean, really hard.
And just, we haven't really done a lot, but Aaron and I are available too if you know, have one-on-one questions about your resume or a particular job you're applying for or anything. Feel free to reach out to us. I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
For a while, since for a while, it's like sometimes there's an uptick of people reaching out for one-on-one, and lately I don't think we've had as many. And it could be because of COVID, but yeah, we're definitely here, and depending on your career interests, we may spot who supports you, just if somebody has more experience in a particular field than the other person. And I think it's always good because there is no one perfect way to have a resume or a cover letter, and getting advice from different people, you can pick up different tips and, you know, take going, try out different things and see what sticks. And then just one more thing, our book club is next Monday night. That's hosted by Cheryl Post. So she will be taking the lead. It's a Brene Brown book. I'm forgetting the title right now off the top of my head, but you can access it for free through the library system. Do you remember the title, Erin? Something with imperfection.
Oh, the book for next week.
Yeah.
Um,
I know. I'm trying to search real quick.
yeah.
Aaron, does your email have one or two S's in wellness?
Oh, it would have two S's.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that.
We were just trying to see if we were paying attention.
Oh, okay. No, that's good.
Yeah, I'm almost there. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown.
Hmm.
Did the newsletter go out this week?
I did not see it today.
Yeah, I didn't either. So
I didn't
this was
receive it
part
either.
2.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Jen was very busy today because she had a workshop that she gave, and also she was doing one-on-ones on her TeamWorks cohort. So,
Yeah, they started at 9 o'clock this morning.
yeah.
Yeah, I imagine she'll put maybe send it out a little bit later and then. So yeah, thank you so much to both presentations, and I love the extra resources too.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
And I'll be sure to email everyone who's here today so I can send you their extra resources, but they'll also go on the library as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you, Trina.
Great,
Thank you. Have a good night, all right?
Okay, good night.
You too.
Good night.
Mhm.